welcome to Women's Wellth, the podcast with me, Joanne. My mission is to educate, inspire, and empower you all to step into your own life of wealth. That feeling of being so rich in your mind, body, and soul. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's get straight into it.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Women's Wellth, the podcast with me, your host, Joanne. And as always, so grateful to have everyone here. So whether you're returning or you've just found me in the podcast sphere, welcome. And I have a guest with me today. And this podcast actually fits perfectly with the last podcast that I posted. So in the last podcast, I was talking about body positivity or body toxicity. So if you haven't listened to that one, go and have another listen, or go and have a listen, or you can listen again if you want to, and then come back and listen to this one, because it's really going to feed in and give an alternative view on to things that I mentioned in my solo podcast last week. So I have with me today Bridie Wilkins, who is a fitness director at Women's Health. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. I'm happy to have you here. And I think we should just get straight into it. So when we chatted a few weeks ago, I think we could have spoken for hours and hours and hours.
We really should have just recorded that.
Yeah, we should have recorded that. But yeah, what I wanted to start with today is you mentioned something when we were chatting. I'll let you tell your own story, but a little bit about how exercise and expectation of exercise and body image years ago in your younger years has actually affected you now in your older years. I think we should get straight in and talk about that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. So I'll probably get straight into the deep, dark depths of that story, the worst part of my life. I guess I'll actually start with how my sort of relationship with health and fitness began. So my mum was always quite active. She was always quite keen for us to join sports. So I did tennis, I did netball, I did every single type of dance you could think of. Like, I don't know if you're into dance, but ballet, tap, jazz, the usual.
Yeah, I dabbled when I was younger as well.
Yeah, I feel like everyone did as a child. And then in terms of exercise as opposed to sport, I remember at school, we had this tiny gym. It was, compared to gyms nowadays, it was horrific. But that was always my favourite PE class. So I just loved that. That was like my first experience with workouts. And then at uni, that was where things got a bit too much. So I started to use exercise as a stress release, which obviously we know is a good thing. Everyone knows that. But there is obviously a very fine line. And I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but in terms of my work and my career, I always want to outperform myself. So I put a lot of stress on myself, and then I was using exercise to help with that. And at the start, it was helping massively. And that was mainly, it was almost all running. So I would run probably 4 or 5 times a week. And the distances weren't huge. It was about, I'd say, average 3 to 5K on every run. But I had no idea about like pacing or intervals or anything like that. It was just go as fast as I can, as hard as I can. So that happened. And then I was doing that for probably, I'd say that routine I had for about a year. And then I was on holiday with my mum. And I was on a treadmill, and again, I was just running. I never really had a distance in mind. I would just go till I felt like I was going to pass out. And I felt this sharp stabbing pain in my groin, and I was like, oh, what's that? And I physically couldn't finish the run. I couldn't even walk. So I remember I was basically limping back to our hotel room. And I was like, Mum, like something is seriously wrong. But at that point, I was about 20. Yeah, I was still at uni. So I think I was about 20, 21. And my mum and I both just assumed that it was like a groin stretch, because obviously like that's just your go-to. It was in that exact area. So for the next 10 months, I continued. I was seeing doctors. They thought it was a groin stretch as well. I was seeing physios, and I was really religious with like the routine that they gave me, the exercises they gave me. And then after 10 months, I was actually diagnosed with a pelvic stress fracture, which was like so uncommon, which is why it took so long for it to get diagnosed. Because for my age, and like on the surface, I was fit, healthy. But it turned out I actually had osteopenia, which is like the predecessor to osteoporosis, where your bones are really weak. And obviously running is not great for that because you're just constantly pounding them, like the impact on them. And I was sort of doing weight training, but very ad hoc, like probably once a fortnight. But if I'd been doing more, I really, to this day, I'm convinced that it wouldn't have happened because obviously your muscles protect your joints and your bones. So yeah, in terms of the body image question, back to your question about that, it's hard to say whether it was about, I wouldn't say it was necessarily about the way that I looked, the reason that I was exercising so much. But I just, my knowledge, my education around my purpose for exercise and what it did for me was just so poor. And I think at that age, even nowadays, people just don't, when you're that young, you just don't have the knowledge that you need.
And I agree. And I think there's so much now, what I was chatting about in my last podcast, is we're fed, like we could go on Instagram now and there could be 10, 15 different, you need to do this, you need to eat this, you need to exercise this way, no, you need to do it this way. And it's kind of an overload again. So they're trying to be all positive, it's health, it's this is the way these things should be done. However, you're a perfect example of, you're doing the right things, but then without the knowledge, without the understanding, it can be quite unsafe, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. To your point about being told different things, I think people are often told to do different types of exercise. Like one day we're told HIIT is great for you. The next people are told only do Pilates. But something that I always try and get across in my features for women's health is that it is very individual. Like you need to work out what works for you and stick with that. So personally, and I think this would probably be, I mean, obviously it's hard. It's impossible to say what would be perfect for everyone. But I think a combination of everything. So running is obviously like probably one of the high, alongside HIIT, it's one of the highest impact forms of exercise. Whereas now I'll run, I do Pilates, I do yoga, I strength train. So I'm never repeating the same singular movement over and over again, like I was with running, but my body didn't know any other sort of movement, any other like pattern. So yeah, I think it's just working out what works for you. And not taking these articles and this sort of advice, especially on social media. I think that it's a hard one with social media because I feel like it is often vilified as like the devil when it comes to health and fitness. And I do appreciate that, like, it's hard to decipher whether the people that are telling you, sharing this advice, are qualified to do so. But it's just hard to know whether to believe them and how to not when you're so vulnerable at a young age as well. Like when I was that age and when I did go through that diagnosis, I do think I probably was influenced a lot by social media. Whereas now I've like I do this quite frequently, actually. Every few months, I'll have a proper cull of people that I follow.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, it's just useful, isn't it? Because I think the algorithm is so clever as well. If you pay any attention to something that's about running, it's only going to show you running, and then you could easily think that running is the only thing that you need to do. I know you and I discussed this before, but YouTube has started doing something where they verify, I think it's just NHS workers with a tick like Instagram has for celebrities and experts. But I think Instagram, it would be unreal if Instagram could do that for health and fitness experts, but not, I think it should be a different color to the blue tick.
Yeah. And that would allow people then to just say, right, okay, they know what they're talking about, as in they're qualified, they have a certificate, they've trained, they have the knowledge, or is it just an influencer who
Exactly.
And some influencers, again, that's their job to influence, but are they just following whatever trend or whoever it is that's sponsoring them at that time, and whoever, is paying their wages to, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do this now. And yeah, that's an amazing idea. You can get that off. If anyone's
You and
listening
I
to this
should
who
do
works
that.
at Instagram, yeah.
Let's pitch it.
Just put that out there.
What was I going to say? I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh, influencers as well, something that I think people aren't necessarily aware of, especially when you're younger. Their job is influencing. And if they're fitness influencers, they don't have a full-time job to fit in around their workouts. They can spend every day doing, like, they could do 2-hour workouts every day if they wanted to. They could do it in the middle of the day. So I think when you are younger, even I don't even think you need to be young. I do think a lot of young adults still look at it and think that that's what they should be doing.
Yeah. I know I've friends as grown women who follow, and again, this is one call that I had, and it was a few years ago now. You know what? The Only Way is Essex girls, and they were all on these crazy, what did they call it? No carbs before marbs diet.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you can remember that, but I had friends who were grown women, older than these women, following these diets, and looking at the pictures of these girls on Towie that were, beautiful women, but you can tell that they were edited and everything was out of proportion. And having to say to my friends, like, you do know that's photoshopped, or like you can see her like really squeezing in her tummy, or she's heavily made up there. These things that they're doing, I can't remember one of the diets. I really like maple syrup and water. I was like, of course they're losing weight. They're not actually eating any food.
Yeah,
That is what is going to happen. And I just think, and your example of doing a mixture of exercise and seeing what feels good for your body, I think is the way that this body positivity health movement really needs to sort of switch to, or from, a point of view of what is good for your body, what is an ideal weight for your body, what is your ideal size, because we're all different, and some people have more curves, some people have less curves, and some people need to do more cardio. That's good for them. And if they we having to learn about our bodies rather than learning about someone else's body and just trying to mimic that for ours.
Exactly, which is impossible.
Yeah, and especially when we're through a screen, because again, it's we look at these, we see this image and like, oh my god, they look amazing. I'm going to do that. But have they? And there's women, have they had children? Are they older than are they younger than you? Because if you're in your 30s, mid 30s, coming into late 30s, or 40s, going to perimenopause, and you're looking at a 20-year-old thinking that's what I aspire to be, then unfortunately it's going to be unrealistic for us to get that. So I think we do need to sort of really turn inwards and listen to our bodies. What shifts did you see when you had your diagnosis and you started moving away from primarily running into different sports, exercises? What kind of shifts did you notice in your physical body?
I think another thing I want to say as well, it wasn't just the change of type of exercise I did. It was also the structure of my routine. So I know I said I did about 4 or 5 runs a week. And then after that, so when I started incorporating strength training, Pilates, yoga, I'd also walk more as well, just like slow. I don't know if you've heard of LISS, low intensity, steady state training. Doesn't necessarily need to be walking, but walking is a good example. It's just where you maintain a steady state. It's very low intensity. So I was doing walking as well. But with my runs, I would be walking after them, so they could take up to like an hour. And I would always think that those workouts needed to be very high intensity. I needed to be pouring in sweat if I wanted to reap any rewards. But then obviously you don't get that from Pilates and yoga, but I would feel more refreshed after doing those, more energized than after the runs. After the runs, I'd come back and I would feel like utterly exhausted and also starving, like absolutely ravenous, and not just straight after either. For the whole day I would feel ravenous. So yeah, I think that I think my body just started to feel so much stronger. Another thing I started to do, I know I would have had 2 rest days anyway from the start, but splitting them up. So sometimes I would do the runs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I'd only rest on a weekend. But now I would have, say, if I train on a Monday and a Tuesday, I might have a rest day on a Wednesday, train on a Thursday, Friday, rest day, Saturday, Sunday. And it just gives my muscles the time to recover. And physiologically, that is actually what you need to do. If you want to build muscle, the rest days are the only time that they're actually going to have the opportunity to do that. But I think the biggest thing for me was probably changing the structure of my workouts and the duration. So now strength training is probably the longest workout, purely because I'll be taking rests between sets. Things like setting up the equipment takes time. Obviously, it doesn't need to. You can easily get a good strength training workout with 1 set of dumbbells. Even like a resistance band, it costs how much? £4. You can get so cheap on Amazon. That's probably the longest workout. Pilates, I do usually before work. So we have 3 office days, and I'll usually do Pilates because it is the quickest, and they'll be literally sometimes only 15 minutes. But for the rest of that day, I feel like mentally clearer. I feel more confident for the whole day. Yoga, sometimes an hour, sometimes half an hour, sometimes 20 minutes. I think I've learned that it doesn't need to be a super intense, super long workout. And even though times are changing, I do think there are still a lot of people who think that workouts need to be right. Let's go and kill ourselves if we want to see any rewards.
I see that as a yoga teacher as well. So I have, you get some people that come into yoga and they want that hard, sweaty workout, and that is fine. But then in the same room, you have people that are there because they are there for the mental aspect and they want to slow down. And you can sort of see the ones that are shaking. And even if you're saying, pick up the prop, use the prop,
they won't.
Shoulders are, they will not. They are there and they're pushing for it, and they want that sweaty workout. But I'm very similar to you in not that I was a runner, but I went through, obviously, love yoga, decided to make it my career. But there was a time when I was just doing yoga, and I really noticed, of course, yoga helps you to build strength, but I have 2 slipped discs in my back. And previous to just doing yoga, I was doing a little bit of strength, I was doing Pilates, and then I kind of stopped that because I was like, yoga every day. I wasn't even giving myself, my rest was yin yoga, which now I know isn't a rest, and I wasn't allowing my body to rest. But because I was hitting yoga so much, eventually after about 6 months of doing that, my pain in my slip disc started again, because I was obviously not building, toning, using my core in different ways. It was just repetitive, and yoga has its strength there, but then I could feel the difference in my body. And then when I was like, my body was actually just, you need to lift some weight. So I was like, I'm going to lift. So I did. So I started incorporating a little bit of strength training. I did a little bit of HIIT. I started doing, again, Pilates, working. And I think as quick as maybe 4 weeks, I was like, my back is not hurting, because it was hurting me when I was teaching and I was doing cat and cow, even something so simple like that. I was like, oh, this is not good. But 4 weeks of actually mixing it up and listening to my body telling me that you need some strength, you need some other things in here. And I can remember practicing, thinking, oh, this feels weird, it's not actually hurting me. And then I just continued with that pattern. And like you said, just noticing, it really helped my yoga practice actually, by moving differently, strengthening my core. Hamstrings are way longer because now I'm lifting weights and using my hips, and just having that intuitive guidance from your body, it will tell you what it needs. Well, she will. It's not she will tell you what she needs, and it's just a case of listening, isn't it?
100%.
just interrupting this episode to remind you to please like, subscribe, drop 5 stars if you enjoy listening to my podcast. It really does mean the world to me. And also to remind you, you can now watch every episode on my YouTube channel. Head to YouTube, type in Joanne Wellth, and I'll see you there.
I do think it is important to, like we were saying, incorporate everything, but find a balance, and you can tilt that balance according to your preference. So if you do prefer yoga, you could do more yoga, but just make sure you do have a bit of strength in there as well. I'm also a qualified yoga teacher. I don't actually teach now, but I've experienced the same as you, not slipped disc, but when I've overdone yoga, I get sort of hamstring tendonitis. And then same as you, as soon as I start to feed back in more strength training and I focus on hamstring exercises, it eases off.
Yeah. Do they call it yoga bum or something? Is that yoga bum?
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, exactly that. That's like that.
Yeah, it's yoga bum, isn't it? And I can remember when I first started doing yoga, and I was like, how's that a thing? Surely yoga's good for you. But then no, too much of a good thing. You need this mix.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think more is more, because we're always told exercise is so good for you. So you can't blame people for thinking that more is.
And we live in a society where bigger, more, everything is emphasized, everything is over the top, and we're just used to it's bigger and better and stronger and longer, and everything has to be exaggerated, I guess. And I think we need to pull that back.
And something that I want to say on that as well. Sorry, just to jump in before I'll forget otherwise. Mentally, I feel like trying to sustain a routine that you might see on social media where someone's training for 2 hours a day, that's not going to help. That's obviously going to make it worse for you. I actually read a study, I think it was last year it was published, and it just said it was about overtraining and how obviously it can exacerbate mental health problems, because it's just impossible, and it just adds stress, because in the back of your mind, whether you're conscious or not, you're trying to sustain a completely unrealistic, overwhelming routine. I think that probably happened to me, to be honest. But now in my head, I'm like, 20 minutes is so doable. Like, that's not going to add that much stress to me. Whereas trying to carve out, it's not.
And 20 minutes is enough. 20 minutes movement, 30 minutes movement. And again, shifting away from these hour, 2 hour, just move, go for a walk. If you're not feeling it on those days, like I speak to women who they will force themselves to do it. Like, if I'm not feeling it, I will go for a walk, because I know that my body's like, come on, let's just go and clear your mind. Or I'll take a rest, because I know how important that is, to let your body absorb everything that you're doing to it. So if you are working out a lot, taking those rest days to allow your body to recover. But again, these are not the kind of things that we see on social media of these influencers sitting down and just watching the TV. Like, don't feel guilty for it. Your body needs it. Have a lie-in.
But also know that they probably do that. They do.
But they just don't post it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that leads nicely as well. We're talking about intuition. I want to talk a little bit about food and diet, and how, again, just talking everything that was sort of, pun intended, fed from the internet. And this is what I spoke about in my last podcast, that we're told. So I was talking about the well, they're called fat influencers. I feel really bad saying it, but that's what they call themselves. And they're following these diets, and I use diet loosely, of KFC for breakfast, liter ice creams for lunch, and really pushing this narrative of it's okay to be big, so that means it's okay to eat whatever you want. And it just really, I think we're going too far that way. And in the same way as we need to be intuitive with our bodies, we really need to emphasize and promote being intuitive with your food. How do you feel about that? How do you go around your healthy diet with your exercise?
So I've kind of done the rounds with this as well as with my exercise. So when I was diagnosed with my pelvic stress fracture, as I said, I was at uni. And like most students, I felt like I didn't have the money to eat healthy. So I literally lived off pasta with salad cream, literally pasta with salad cream. That was it. And then in our halls, we were above a Tesco, and they used to sell these granola pots, literally just like, but it was, you know how you think, I thought in my head granola was healthy.
Yeah.
It was obviously
Yeah,
just
same.
pure sugar, literally just pure sugar. So honestly, that was all I had, pasta, salad cream and that. And I'd sometimes get like a panini at the canteen. And then it was only really through my job. So I've been in health and fitness journalism for probably about 6 years. And it was only through that I really started to learn about proper nutrition. I don't feel like at the time of the stress fracture, I wasn't necessarily thinking like, oh, I need to cut out food groups. It was more just the money thing. And even when I left uni and I did get my first job, I was in fashion initially. But again, I wasn't really influenced by like diets or looking a certain way. So that happened. And then as I started to learn through my job, I learned about more nutrition. So like it was all about, I want to nourish my body, you know, I want to give it what it needs. I don't want to cut out food groups. I've never really been on a diet, as in like, let's cut out, say, carbs. So yeah, I've learned that. And then I think learning about macros was probably something big for me. So the split between carbs,
Yeah.
fat, and protein. That was mainly because I knew that from the pelvic stress fracture, I wouldn't have suffered from it if I had stronger muscles, which we know, everyone knows protein is good for that. But then at the same time, see, I really have done the rounds with this. Through learning about macros, I used an app called MyFitnessPal. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I used that. And don't get me wrong, at the start, that was so useful. It really taught me like what the macros are in certain foods. But it also shows you your calorie count. And I didn't download it thinking, oh, I want to count my calories. But I ended up using it daily. Honestly, I don't think I missed a day for probably 3 years. And in that time, I would also just subconsciously, I'd be looking at the calorie count. And I wasn't really thinking, oh, I need to get it lower. But if I'd had less the day prior, I'd be like, oh, I've had a bit much today. Like tomorrow I won't have as much. But I think just the idea of now, the fact that I tracked every single day for that many years was just so much. Like it's just an added stress to my day.
God,
Another thing,
3 years is a long time.
I know. Even now, if sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'll have a little look just because I want to know like what my macro split is, what I'm intuitively eating. And then sometimes I'll end up, I don't know why, I almost get like hooked on it. I'll end up using it for like 2 weeks and then I'm like, oh, I've done that every day for 2 weeks. But I know now, like that's not healthy. So I can easily cut it off. Another thing that I've learned actually, which I think is really important, is not to train fasted. I don't know if do you train fasted or?
No, only because I mostly work out in the morning and I always wake up hungry and it's just my routine, eat my breakfast. And if I do train and I haven't had breakfast for whatever reason, I always feel a little bit sick. So even if I'm in a rush and I haven't got time to sit down, I generally just have porridge for my breakfast. I'll eat a banana. I'll have to eat something. I'll, grab a banana or something to eat in the car, but that's very rare. I know I make sure that I have time to eat in the morning.
So I wrote an article about the pros and cons of fasted training versus fed state, which is basically just where you've eaten prior to training.
Yeah.
And again, it is very individual. Like for some people, they might find that eating with a full stomach would make them feel sick, whereas you and we would feel sick without having eaten something.
Yeah.
But I think that is probably one of the biggest factors that has helped in making me feel so much fitter and stronger. Just because I feel like I run for longer, I can lift heavier, even if I've literally had a banana before training. Whereas before, I don't think I ate before when I was doing the running. I don't think I ever ate anything before. Even after that, for about 3 years, I think I'd always train fasted because I would do it in the morning.
Yeah. And just the thought of I just feel sick. Even thinking about it, it makes, I don't know, I haven't had naturally low blood sugar as well. So it makes me lightheaded and I just feel crap. I need to eat. Like I know some people don't wake up hungry and there's all the different fasting diets. Like I have tried it. Actually, it's funny, the other week I was talking to my friend and she swears by intermittent fasting. I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try it. I think I lasted about 2 hours and then I was hungry and I was like, I can't do it. I need to eat. And then I don't know if I do have quite willpower. So I think it's just that I'm not used to listening to my body. Like when I'm hungry, I'll eat something, and I try not to eat for the sake of it. That kind of, not that it's a diet, but if there's something there and I'm not, I'll ask myself, are you hungry? Do you need that? No, I don't need it. So I don't eat it. And when I'm hungry, I'll eat it, so also, trying to stop myself is just, my brain's like, no, you need to eat. So I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Also on the topic of eating intuitively, I don't know why, I think it must stem back to my childhood somehow. My grandparents are Irish, and my granddad was always like, if I didn't finish my plate, he'd always be like, oh, whereas if you finished, he'd be like, oh, like she's got a great appetite, and like cheer me on. Whereas now, I've sort of learnt that it's fine. So you don't have to eat the whole thing if you're not hungry.
Yeah,
but
it's funny you should say that. I've had to train myself for that, because my dad's actually stopping with us in Dubai, and even when you're an adult, the parents are like, oh, you can't have any dessert if you don't eat it all. It's that.
Exactly.
Like we were just eating the other day, and I am I'll eat it even if I'm full and I have tummy ache. But since I have been really intuitive with my eating, I'm like, no, I'm full. Like I'll pause. I make sure that I chew for longer, and I pay attention to what I'm eating, because I used to find as well, I'd be watching the TV and just scoffing it away, and then have that horrible, full, bloated feeling after. Whereas now I'll pause, and it might be that it goes in the fridge for an hour and then I go back to it. But at that moment in time, I'll stop, because my body's telling me that you don't need this.
Exactly.
Give me time to digest.
I think that feeds into intuitively exercising as well, in terms of what type you do, how long you do it for. If you're feeling like, I think we wrote an article about this actually. My memory sometimes is not great. It was about like what type of exercise you should do according to how you feel. So like if you feel anxious, running could help. If you feel stressed, yoga could help. But it's again, like, comes back to everything that we've been saying. It is just so individual. Like we're telling people what works for us, but your listeners shouldn't necessarily do that. We basically should do what your body is telling you to do.
Yeah, 100%. And I just, in an ideal world, that would be the narrative that is being pushed. So no more body positivity. Yes, every size is beautiful, but not the obese size that some people are pushing, and not, on the other side, which we don't see as much anymore. But when I was growing up, the pro-rexia websites, and there's always this two polar opposites, whereas what we should really be promoting and learning is what feels good for you: exercise, food, rest. Listen to your body and choose those things, not what one person is telling you here or what you're seeing over here. And just listening and absorbing, and go for yourself. So you might want to run 3 times a week, and yoga and lift weights 1 time a week, and your friend might do the opposite, and that's perfectly okay. So just really pushing this narrative of listen to your body, be intuitive, and that's it.
And I think
if we can just change the world,
you and I, let's put the world to rights. I think if you do that as well, exercise will just become naturally more enjoyable, because you're not forcing yourself to do something that you don't want. If you know that it's going to feel good for you, and you get used to that feeling, that'll also make you, if your goal is to exercise more frequently, if you enjoy it, you will do it more frequently, just naturally.
And did you find that, sorry, just going back to exercise, that when you were putting the expectation on yourself to exercise, you did lose a little bit of the enjoyment, and it was more of
100%,
a chore, but then you did it because you didn't want that guilt.
Massively.
When you would miss a run, and then you would feel guilty, so you just wouldn't miss.
Absolutely. And this also started to affect my social life. So even if I had plans, but I'd been at uni all day and I hadn't been able to run, I'd be like, right, cancel the plans. I must go on my run. But then I'd get back from the run and be like, oh, I've got such bad FOMO. Like, all my friends have been out. What it's like at uni, like going out is such a huge part. So massively, 100%. And now the complete opposite. I also sort of, my exercise routine now has almost enhanced my social life, because I've met people through classes. I've got a yoga studio, not where I teach myself, but there are regulars there. We have a nice chat. Same with my Pilates. I go to a reformer Pilates studio, and everyone goes to the same class. We have the same teacher every week, so it's just nice to meet new people.
Yeah, and you do have those the little communities. It's the same faces every week, and you know, it does expand you there.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. And reformer, oh my God.
Have you tried it?
Yes, it's hard. Yeah.
It's hard.
So if I know we've said a lot of things here, that if we had a magic wand and we could wave the magic wand just to help at least one person listening to this. So there are a few little gems I think we've pulled out today. But what would one thing that your closing words for people listening to this today that you would like them to leave with, a wish for them, or something that you would like, you know, your last with parting wise words for the listeners today?
I think it kind of just summarizes everything we've been saying, but just know that what works for someone else's body might not work for yours, both in terms of exercise and nutrition. So if you're on social media and you're seeing someone do 4 strength training workouts a week, don't think that you have to do that, because even if you do that, you might hate it. You might end up getting injured from that. It could put you off exercise for life.
Yeah.
So just listen to your body. Just listen to your body, like how you feel, what you enjoy, and also try everything. Try and find a workout that works for you. You might prefer dance workouts, which isn't very common, but you might love that. Someone on our team has actually started ballet classes, and that's now her favorite workout.
Yeah. And ballet is a really good workout as well.
Exactly,
yeah.
You don't see many people doing that, so not many people would even consider it.
Yeah.
Even like tennis. My mum is a big tennis fan. She's been playing for ages. And I started going with her recently, and I absolutely love it. I haven't been since I was like 10, probably younger actually. But now I love it. It's like one of my favorite workouts.
Yeah, and that is a really good point to end on, actually, because we have the fashionable workouts, don't we, that were sort of shown, and they go through phases. HIIT, Pilates. Now wall Pilates keeps coming up on my socials quite a lot. And then
that's one of our top performing articles on the website. Yeah,
the wall Pilates. I haven't tried it. It just keeps popping up. I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, try new things, because again, going back to what you said before, that your body needs to move in different ways as well. So listening to your body, let yourself have fun and go out and enjoy, because you know you've only got one body. Enjoy it. Don't make it something that is going to make you feel like it's a chore.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today.
And
I hope that, if I always say this, but just one person just resonates. I think we've covered a lot today. And if you're there and you're struggling with your workouts, just please listen to your body. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me, and I'll put all of Bridie's information in the show notes as well, so you can reach out to her too. And thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat to you.
Thank you.